And for more on the President's participation in the International Climate Summit, we're joined over the phone by Professor Dr. Emad Adly, who is an expert at the Ministry of State for Environmental Affairs. Professor Adly, well, the President is expected to address the Climate Summit, a very important gathering, and His Excellency will definitely also talk about climate change, not only in Egypt and how is it a challenge, but also in Africa, as His Excellency chairs the African Union. So that important program, developmental programs in that sphere, and the significance of the President's speech before this important gathering. Professor.
Yes, as you said, rightly said, the presentation or the speech by His Excellency the President is very important, being not only speaking on behalf of Egypt, but also on behalf of the African Union. Especially that the climate change issue and the risks of the climate change is affecting more the Africa region, and especially the poorest countries in the Africa region. And it's already mentioned by the Secretary General of the United Nations that the world is not on the right track for to deal with the climate change. Basically because the rich countries, the developed countries, those who are responsible for the occurrence of the climate change and the global warming, they are not really putting what they have to do to deal with the situation. We have been very successful on the issue of mitigation, on the mitigation of the climate change and the greenhouse effect, greenhouse gases, I'm sorry. But unfortunately, we were not successful on the issues related to adaptation. And unfortunately, the countries that are going to be affected by the climate change are mainly the poor countries, and in Africa, the risks and the impact will be really beyond the capacity of these countries. And of course, this needs two things to be provided: technology and financial support. So the address or having the President addressing the General Assembly, speaking on behalf of Africa and on behalf of Egypt, this will make his presentation very important. And also, he has to find in his bilateral meetings and with the international organizations some feedback from the countries, especially the rich countries, developed countries. We are talking about USA, we are talking about European Union, we are talking about Japan, we are talking about China, all those who are responsible for the emission of the greenhouse gases, and also they have the capacity to provide the technology and the financial support. In addition to the international organization that they have to work closely with governments and with the stakeholders in Africa and in Egypt to deal with the climate change risks and hazards.
Yes, definitely. Egypt is also exerting great efforts in that respect, leading efforts of climate change adaptation, a matter which is really essential now to deal with the issue of climate change. So if we talk about Egypt's efforts in that respect, and what kind of adaptation measures, in your opinion, are needed?
As you know, the climate, and also I'm talking to our audience, the climate change risks in Egypt could affect two main things, especially when it comes to food security and water security. Because of the drought that could happen due to the climate change, and also the risk of the flooding that could happen due to the sea level rise, which could affect the delta, and of course it is the main source of food security for the country. Plus, of course, affecting all the infrastructure that are already on the north coast. The issue also of the Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia is one of the issues that could also, in addition to the risk of having a dam on the main source of the Nile, if the climate change could also deal to minimize the amount of water coming from the Blue Nile. So together, the food security and water security are the most important elements and risks of the climate change. And to adapt to this, this means, many steps to be taken in the field of basically the agriculture and in the water management in the country. Already we have put some steps toward the adaptation measures for the protection of the North Coast and also to deal with the risks and the hazards of drought and flooding. But it is not enough, and the government cannot take all the responsibility, or the country cannot take all the responsibilities by itself. But we need to have, as I said, also the cooperation and the support from the international agencies, plus the developed countries who are main responsible for the occurrence of this phenomenon.
Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Emad Adly, for joining Line TV International and talking live to Panorama News.